Hey everyone! So we recently dove into how the Fed is positioning to make us some serious money. Now I know what you're thinking. Come on, Nick. That sounds way too good to be true. And hey, I get it. That does sound pretty bold. But here's the thing. When we actually look at the data and compare what the Fed is doing right now to their previous cycles, we see something incredible. Every single time they've made moves like this in the past, prices have gone absolutely insane. We're talking parabolic runs that have completely blown people's minds. And honestly, I don't think this time is going to be any different. In fact, I'm expecting we're going to see that exact same explosive reaction, but even bigger than before. So let's jump into what's happening in the market right now, because these numbers are looking pretty sweet. We're seeing XRP surge up 6.7%, HR climbing 3.6%, and check this out. A bunch of those older coins are making some serious moves too. XLM is up 3.5%. And look at these beautiful green numbers across the board. We've got coins pushing 9%, others at 5.2%, 4.8%. It's just gains everywhere you look. This is exactly the kind of action that gets me excited, and I think you're going to love what's coming next.
Now let's talk about where the big players are sitting right now. Bitcoin is chilling at around 111,000, and Ethereum is pushing close to that 4,000 mark. Pretty solid, but honestly not seeing any major fireworks there today. But here's where it gets interesting. XRP is absolutely crushing it at almost $2.60, up a massive 6.9% just today. Compare that to Ethereum's modest 1.8% bump and Bitcoin's tiny 0.8% move, and you can see XRP is clearly the star of the show right now. This is exactly the kind of divergence that catches my attention, and it should catch yours too.
All right, let's talk about Bitcoin. And this is where things get really interesting. We're still sitting inside this wedge pattern, just waiting for that big move to happen. Now, if Bitcoin starts pushing to the upside, which I'm really hoping for, we might see a little rejection first. It could pull back and retest that bottom trend line one more time, kind of like it's building up pressure before that massive breakout finally hits. And honestly, that wouldn't surprise me at all. We've seen this exact playbook before, and guess what happened every single time? All-time highs, baby! When I zoom into the shorter time frames, looking at that 4-hour chart, things are actually looking pretty solid. The structure is holding up really well, and even on the daily chart, we've got that beautiful higher low still in play. Technically speaking, based on those candle body closes, we just printed a higher high. Now, I'd absolutely love to see us smash through that 114,000 level. That would be incredible. But even without that breakout yet, Bitcoin's structure is looking rock solid right now. This is the kind of setup that gets me excited about what's coming next.
Now, moving over to Ethereum, it's basically the same story as Bitcoin, but with a twist. Ethereum is actually squeezing even tighter in its pattern, which honestly has me pretty excited because tight squeezes usually lead to explosive moves. Now, could we still see a rejection here? Absolutely. And we need to keep our eyes open for that. But here's what I'm really thinking. I believe we're setting up for a much bigger move to the upside. Let me break this down for you. When I look at the 24-hour time frame, yeah, technically we do have a lower low compared to what we saw on the 17th and 18th. But here's what I'm really watching. If Ethereum can break above those previous highs, that would line up perfectly with breaking over this upper trend line. And guys, that would be absolutely bullish. We'd be looking at a fresh higher high, which is exactly what we want to see. The beautiful thing is, even on those shorter time frames, Ethereum's structure is still looking rock solid. And then we have XRP. And I know this is what everyone's been asking me about. ... Yeah, XRP is very bullish. I don't know if this is up to date. Let me refresh real quick. Okay, so when I'm looking at XRP on the 4-hour chart, and this is where things get really exciting. I was drawing out these trend lines, and guess what? We just broke out. This is huge, guys, because it's showing us that XRP is building some seriously bullish structure, especially on this 4-hour time frame. Let me walk you through what I'm seeing. We've got our low down here, then a beautiful higher low. And we had these recent highs creating lower highs. But here's the kicker. We just smashed through that previous high, which gave us that bullish structure we've been waiting for. Now the next big target? We need to break above these highs up here, which would put us right around that $2.64 level. If we can flip that resistance into support, man, that would be incredibly bullish. It would also line up perfectly with a major breakout on the daily chart. And here's what gets me really excited. If this plays out, we'd be reclaiming those highs from way back in May,
putting us on a direct path to retest around $2.73. That level would have us flipping major support on the XRP chart, which is exactly what we want to see. Now, I know this all sounds amazing, but let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. We need to stay patient and watch for XRP to really deliver that much larger breakout we're all hoping for. Oh, and by the way, did you guys see that stocks just hit a new all-time high? They even closed out the week at an all-time high. This is happening because we're getting some major updates around tariffs, the trade war situation, and what the Fed has been hinting at. Plus, the big banks are telling us some pretty interesting things. If what they're saying turns out to be true, we could be looking at a much bigger rally across this entire market.
All right, let's dive into what's been happening with these China tariffs. And guys, this is pretty wild stuff. So check this out. Trump's latest China tariffs just triggered a massive $19 billion in Bitcoin liquidations, and it's actually putting Bitcoin's incredible October streak in serious danger. We're talking about Bitcoin dropping 6% this October, which could make it the first negative month we've seen since way back in 2018. That's crazy when you consider that October historically averages around 20% gains for Bitcoin. Here's what went down. President Trump announced 100% tariffs on Chinese software imports. Yeah, you heard that right, 100%. This absolutely escalated those US-China trade tensions, and the market did not like it one bit. We saw Bitcoin crash 14%, and get this, $19 billion in crypto liquidations happened between October 10th and 11th. That's an insane amount of money getting wiped out in just 2 days. But here's what everyone's watching now. We've still got about a week left in October, and all eyes are on the Federal Reserve's meeting on October 29th. There's talk about possible rate cuts, which could completely change the game. And here's a little silver lining. Q4 has historically been really strong for crypto, so there's still some optimism out there despite all this chaos. Now, I want to show you something that's going to blow your mind. I'm looking at these posts from Bitcoin Archive, and the numbers are absolutely wild. Get this, Bitcoin's average fourth quarter returns? A massive 78.66%. That's nearly an 80% average gain in the fourth quarter alone. That's insane. But here's where it gets interesting. Our current Q4 returns are sitting at negative 2.48%. So we're actually in the red right now for the quarter. That means Bitcoin has a ton of catching up to do in November and December if it wants to hit anywhere near that historical average. Think about this for a second. If we're going back to that typical October performance we were just talking about. And speaking of October, check out this alert from Cointelegraph that's got everyone talking. They're saying Bitcoin's October might actually turn red for the first time in 8 years. That's almost a decade, guys. But here's what I love about the crypto community. They're already calling for a Moonvember. I mean, how perfect is that? Even when things look rough, crypto Twitter is out here manifesting those November gains. And honestly, after seeing those historical Q4 numbers, maybe they're on to something. Answer. Now, let me pull this up in a new tab so you can really see what I'm talking about here. When we look at October's track record, and this is pretty incredible, it's typically been super bullish for Bitcoin. In fact, we've only seen a bearish October twice in recent history, back in 2018 and 2014. That's it. Just 2 times out of all these years. And you know what? Despite all the craziness we've seen this month with those tariffs and liquidations, I still think we're going to finish October in the green. Call me optimistic, but the historical data is just too strong to ignore. All right, let me show you what Bitcoin looks like on the monthly chart right now. I'm going to clean this up and remove all the noise so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Check this out. To me, this is looking like a textbook bull flag formation. And honestly, that's got me pretty excited because bull flags are usually followed by some serious upward moves. Here's the thing. We really wouldn't need much to hit a new high and close out October in the green. Right now, we're just consolidating in this range between about 108,000 and 116,000 on the monthly view. And get this, from where we're sitting right now, it would only take about a 5% push to finish the month in the green. Just 5%. That's nothing in crypto terms, right? I genuinely think we're going to see this happen, especially when you consider what's coming up next. And what's coming up, you ask? Well, let me tell you about it. All right, let's talk about what JP Morgan just dropped. And guys, this is huge news that could change everything. So JP Morgan is expecting the Federal Reserve to end quantitative tightening next week. Let me break this down for you because this is massive. They're forecasting that the Fed will basically stop their QT program at the October 28th and 29th FOMC meeting. What does that mean exactly?
Well, they're going to stop that monthly runoff of up to $95 billion in securities. Why? To address money market strains and stabilize banking reserves. That's a lot of money that's about to stop leaving the system. And here's what gets me really excited. JP Morgan isn't alone in this prediction. Bank of America and Evercore analysts are all saying the same thing. When you have the biggest banks all agreeing on something like this, you know it's serious. The markets are already reacting positively to this news. US stock futures are rising, and Bitcoin has already pushed past that 100,000 mark. This whole QT program started back in June 2022 to fight inflation, but now ending it could introduce fresh liquidity into the system and potentially lead to even more rate cuts. And remember, it's not just JP Morgan calling this. Bank of America is right there with them.
But also Deutsche Bank. They're also predicting that the Fed will announce the end of QT next week, so think about this for a second. We've got JP Morgan, Bank of America, Evercore, and Deutsche Bank all saying the same thing. When you have all these major financial institutions lined up like this, that's not a coincidence. And guys, if this actually happens, if the Fed really does end quantitative tightening next week, we could be looking at an absolutely massive rally across the board. Now here's an update that ties perfectly into that video I made about how the Fed is going to make us rich. This is from the Coastal Journal and it's absolutely wild. They're reporting that QE has basically already begun. Get this, the Fed's balance sheet just increased by $10 billion in just 2 weeks. That's a ton of new money entering the system. But here's where it gets really interesting. The Fed's discount window usage, which is basically their lender of last resort program, has shot up 238% year over year. Let me say that again, 238%. That's more than double from last year. And this is all happening right after we've been hearing about banks announcing losses and having collateral issues. So the pieces are really starting to come together here. And it's painting a picture that lines up perfectly with what all those major banks are predicting. And here's the kicker. This is happening at the exact same time that all these major banks are predicting the Fed will end QT next week. The timing is just too perfect to be a coincidence, right? It's like all the pieces of this puzzle are falling into place at once. If this turns out to be true, and honestly, it's looking more and more likely by the day, especially when you consider that the Fed is already showing clear signs that QE is beginning. Then the markets are going to absolutely explode to the upside. We're talking much, much higher prices across the board. And this would line up perfectly with October finishing incredibly green, which would be exactly what we need to keep that historical streak alive. And check this out from TFTC. They're reporting that the Fed's reverse repo facility is completely collapsing. Here's why this matters. When that facility hits zero, liquidity comes rushing back into the system. And guess what happens then? Bitcoin absolutely takes off. This is another piece of the puzzle that's pointing to the same thing we've been talking about. And when we look at this chart, guys, pay attention to the bottom here. Especially if we go back to the end of 2020, you can see this thing was completely bottomed out. But then something incredible happened. Going into 2021, this chart started to absolutely skyrocket. And guess what that led to? Bitcoin went completely parabolic. This is the exact same pattern we're seeing start to unfold right now. Let me give you guys a quick flashback that's going to blow your mind. Let's go back to 2020 and 2021, because this is incredible. So here's the end of 2020, and here's 2021. Check this out. Bitcoin finished October 2020 at around 11K. That's it, just $11,000. But then, boom. By the end of March, going into mid-April, we absolutely rocketed to $64,000. We're talking about nearly a 6 times move in just a few months. And guys, based on everything we're seeing right now with the Fed, with QE starting, with all these major banks predicting the same thing, we could be looking at a massive rally across the entire market. Based on all these stats we've been looking at, plus what the Fed has been hinting at, and especially what's already showing up on those Fed charts, it's telling us that the Fed is about to completely flip the script. We're talking about them ending QT and starting QE at the exact same time we're getting rate cuts. That's like hitting the liquidity jackpot. It's a double dose of stimulus hitting the markets all at once. And here's the crazy part. We are literally just 4 days and about 16 hours away from the next FOMC meeting. We're talking about less than a week until we potentially get confirmation of everything we've been discussing. Now check out what CME Group is showing us, and these numbers are absolutely insane. For the October 29th meeting, there's a 98.3% chance of a rate cut happening. Huh, that's basically a guarantee. And for December, get this, there's a 99.9% chance of another rate cut. We're talking about as close to certain as you can get in financial markets. So let me paint this picture for you. We're about to witness the Fed start QE, end QT, and cut rates twice before the year is over. Guys, this is an extremely bullish environment. It's like the Fed is about to unleash every tool in their toolkit to pump liquidity into the markets. And here's breaking news from the Kabizzi letter that's absolutely wild. The odds of 2 more interest rate cuts in 2025 just surged to a record high of 85%. Here's what's driving this. We've got a data blackout continuing. The labor market is deteriorating, and CPI came in cooler than expected. According to them, the Fed has no choice. They must cut rates. There literally is no other option at this point. And when you look at the environment the Fed is dealing with right now, it's screaming that they need to do everything at once. End QT, start QE, cut rates, and rush liquidity into the system as fast as possible. Guys, when all of this hits the markets at the same time, we're going to see an absolute uproar in price action. We're talking about the kind of explosive moves that create life-changing opportunities. We're going to see these charts go absolutely crazy, especially going into next week. Now I'm going to be 100% honest with you guys. You absolutely need to prepare for some serious volatility because it's coming. We're definitely going to see some wild swings in the short term. But here's what I'm really excited about. We should start seeing a lot of these charts really take off in a big way once this all kicks in. Looking at Bitcoin specifically, it's been pretty clear that we've just been consolidating ever since that massive low we hit. Sure, we might see it dip a little lower on the 24-hour time frame. That's totally possible. But the big picture is that we've been hanging out in this range for quite some time now. And you know what that usually means? We're just building up pressure, waiting for that explosive push to the upside. It's like a coiled spring ready to release all that energy. The FOMC meeting could be the exact day we start seeing that explosive move unfold. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, but Nick, what about all that China stuff we talked about earlier? Well, we just got a huge update on that. On October 30th, the White House announced that President Trump is going to meet with China's President Xi. And here's the kicker. This meeting is happening just 48 hours before that 100% tariff increase on China is supposed to go live. Talk about cutting it close, right? Honestly, I'd bet money on the fact that we're going to see some kind of trade deal hammered out before November 1st. It wouldn't surprise me one bit. In fact, it would make perfect sense. The timing is just too convenient for this to be a coincidence. But guys, we are about to witness some absolutely massive updates in this market. And here's what I find really interesting. The entire environment around this market is starting to flip incredibly bullish. And it's happening at a time when the crypto market is still pretty fearful. You know what that usually means? We could be setting up for one of those classic scenarios where the smart money starts moving in while everyone else is still scared. ... We're sitting at about 34 on the Fear and Greed Index. That's still in fear territory. And that's exactly why I am absolutely locked in and laser focused on what's about to happen next week. This could be the perfect setup for a massive move. We are literally just 4 days away. 4 days from the next FOMC meeting that could change everything. So here's my advice. Definitely prepare for this moment. Make sure you've got some stable coins sitting on the sidelines ready to deploy. Whatever you do, don't act impulsively right now. This is the time to be strategic and patient. Just buckle up because we're about to see some serious volatility hit the market in a big way. All right, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this breakdown of what could be one of the most important weeks for crypto this year. If this got you as excited as I am, smash that like button, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of the action as this all unfolds. You can also follow me on Twitter for real-time updates. And don't forget to join our free Discord community. All the links are in the description below. This has been Nick, and I'll see you in the next one. Let's see what next week brings. Peace out.